We're very pleased this morning to have Dr. Bill Peterson, the Executive VP Exploration, and Dr. Quinton Hennigh, the Geological and Technical Advisor of Eloro Resources. We made an exception to our normal procedure early this year and scheduled Eloro Resources. The January 26th press release had a surface hole where the first 257.5 meters were mineralized, basically 800 feet. That's pretty good. So we made a risk bet that there might be a project here and scheduled it for December to give Bill and Quinton a little time to get some more holes in and build it up. They're now targeting a maiden resource in a few months. The mineralogy here is a little different in Bolivia than we might be accustomed to for silver in Mexico or Peru or the US, where there's 9 products. And the mineral is described in silver equivalent terms, but silver might only be a quarter of the mix or a third of the mix. Bill, do you want to explain how the processing might work?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to, and thanks very much for having us. I essentially, when you look at the metals in this deposit, and it's very typical of this silver tin polymetallic type in southern Bolivia. So you have 4 major metals. You have silver, you have zinc, you have lead, and you have tin. And they're roughly in equal portions, but you also have additional metals. You have some gold, you have copper, we have indium, we have bismuth, we have cadmium. And so in terms of processing here, basically what the metallurgists are looking at initially, you're going to have some front-end gravity here, which will be primarily focused on tin, particularly cassiterite, which seems to be the main mineral as you get deeper in the system. You're going to have flotation for zinc, lead, and likely copper. Certainly, with respect to silver, you're going to get silver in the lead concentrate. You're probably going to get some in the zinc and probably some in the copper. Indium will likely go with the zinc concentrate. You will also have gold, probably with copper. Some of the other more exotic ones, like cadmium, we've got to figure out where it will occur, but I suspect that will probably come out in the zinc as well. So you'll have a multi-stage plant here, and we know the deposit is zoned. So when you're mining it, you're going to have to keep track of your stockpiles and what is going
so
where.
To summarize, the company in production would sell 4 products: a tin concentrate that might have some indium in it, and lead, zinc, and copper concentrates to lead, zinc, and copper refineries, where the gold and silver would report to the cons, and the indium would report to the zinc or the tin concentrate.
Yeah, I think that's
the 8th
very
and 9th,
much
the bismuth and the cadmium may or may not be payable from a refinery. That's subject to metallurgy and negotiation. So your big 43-101 would give you credit for most of them, maybe not all 9 of them, maybe 7 of the 9 or 8 or 9. And maybe 65% of the silver equivalency will translate into dollars, where there's recovery losses, smelter charges, smelter payabilities, and all that stuff in the mix. I just don't want people to multiply the silver equivalency times the price of silver and think you're going to get every dollar of that revenue.
Oh,
Excuse me for clarifying, and please go into your presentation.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and obviously, as I'll talk about, metallurgy is a key part of what we're doing. So, look, pleased to introduce you to the Iska Iska silver tin polymetallic project, Eloro Resources. Just to briefly introduce myself, I'm the Executive Vice President of Exploration. I've had some 47 years experience all over the world, especially in South America, and delighted to be here to talk about this project. This is our typical forward-looking statements here. So just to sort of summarize, Eloro is publicly traded exploration mine development company. We're focused on developing our potential world-class Iska Iska silver tin polymetallic property, which is in the Potosí department of southern Bolivia. We trade on TSXV, ELO, Frankfurt, and also OTCQX, ELRRF. And we have an option to earn a 99% interest in the 9 square kilometer Iska Iska property, which hosts this major silver tin polymetallic porphyry epithermal complex. We're very well financed. We did a Canadian 30 million deal in Q1 2021 through a bought deal with Haywood, Cantor, and Cormark. Right now, we have about 16 million Canadian, 12 million US. Our burn rate's about $1 million US a month. We're doing this aggressive 51,000 meter program, and we're closing in on about 40,000 meters now. That's just the capital structure here. One of the things I've always liked about Eloro, our CEO, Tom Larson, has done a great job keeping a very tight capital structure. You can see we only have 62.5 issued and outstanding, 70, just under 75 fully diluted. And insiders, advisors, et cetera, have a significant holding, and those have been largely paid for. So our stock's trading about 350 Canadian at the moment. It's been up and down, but so very, very good leverage on this story. The management team is very important. It's obviously at this stage, it's slanted very much towards the technical end. A key person for us is Dr. Osvaldo Arce. He's the general manager of Minera Tupiza. He's an expert on Bolivian geology. And I was just down in Bolivia a couple of weeks ago, spent a week with Osvaldo. We got a tremendous team there. Quinton, who's on this call, he's been a highly valued advisor, technical advisor since the start, and he was instrumental in getting the initial financing together with Crescat. So Bolivia, we like Bolivia. We think there's a tremendous opportunity there. The government has been certainly supportive of mining investment. There's 0% VAT on mining industrial equipment. And of course, mining is a big part of Bolivia's GDP. And in contrast to some of the other countries like Peru, Chile, Argentina, I think Bolivia is been quite stable. The government of President Arce has been doing a good job. He has a financial background, and he's the one who's credited with growing the economy. So it's I think a very good time to be in Bolivia. We also, one of the advantages we have with Iska Iska is our agreement is with a private property owner, Edwin Viegas. He's very well known in the local area. He's director of the Tupiza Mining Chamber, which is a real advantage. And this is just a picture of the sort of terrain here. This is on the right here is our Santa Barbara breccia pipe and drilling platform. I won't talk too much about silver. We obviously like silver. We think the outlook for silver is very, very good. And we particularly like tin. Tin is in really quite short supply. The International Tin Council did an interesting video about the uses of tin. There was something like 5,000 scientific abstracts submitted in 2020 on uses of tin technology for all sorts of things in electronics and batteries and so forth. And there's a relatively small number of places in the world that you can find tin, China being one, Malaysia being the other, and of course, Bolivia. So that gives an interesting spin on this story. So looking at our option agreement, which we signed in January 6, 2020, basically it's issuing shares. We've issued half. We have another 250 to issue in early January, and make option payments totaling 10 million. We recently made a $3 million payment towards that because the whole project has been going so well. There are no royalties, no fixed expenditures, although we're obviously spending quite a bit of money on it. That earns us a 99% interest in the property. The 1% will be held by Edmund, and he's a great partner. I met him on my last trip, and he's also got construction companies, and he does a lot of our infrastructure work. He's been just a terrific partner, and we're busy updating our 43-101 with Mike on. We have a very strong environmental and social governance program. We do a lot of work with the local communities. It's also important to emphasize we don't have communities or artisanal miners on the property, which is a real advantage. And we're very committed to our Bolivian and local workforce. Hello?
Bill, should we call tech support at GoToWebinar, or does Quinton have a grandchild under his desk?
There's nobody here, man.
Alicia, would you call GoToWebinar? We have an infant in the background, and none of the three of us has a grandchild handy.
Definitely not. Anyway, to continue, so we're quite proud of the fact we have essentially almost 100% Bolivian and local workforce. We hire a lot of locals. We have 18 geologists working on site. Half of them are women. They're all doing a great job. And we will continue to expand and advance our programs. We're working with one community installing some 100 sanitation stations, and we'll be expanding those programs as we go forward. So moving to the geology, then, we're in this tremendously prolific area of southern Bolivia and the Eastern Cordillera. You can see the red dots are or teardrops are the polymetallic. Of course, Potosi is one of the great silver deposits of the world, largest ever. I was actually just recently there, and you can see lots of other deposits down in this area. I think New Pacific at Silver Sands was a real pioneer here. And then more recently, the Buchan's Group, Andean Precious Metal, has taken over San Bartolome. So we're seeing more money, foreign money coming into Bolivia.
So Bill, we have hosted New Pacific and Pan Am earlier this year in our series, and I visited San Bartolome and San Cristobal maybe 10, 13 years ago at earlier stages.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, certainly, you know, unfortunately, Sumitomo doesn't publish anything about San Cristobal, but of course, Quinton is more familiar with it. But it's a significant mine. Certainly one of the larger silver producers in the world, produces silver, zinc, and lead, and then of course Pan American. So there's and a lot of these other deposits here, Cherokee, Tassina, and so forth, are operated by cooperatives. So Cerrico de Potosi, excuse me. I always show this comparison. Here's the famous hill on the left, Cerro Rico. On the right is Iska Iska. And of course, Cerro Rico, most people think, okay, it's silver, but in actual reality has lots of tin plus lots of other metals, including lead, zinc, and other things. And when you look at Iska Iska, as I'll show you, there are definitely similarities in types of metal contents, timing of mineralization, and scale of mineralizing system. But Iska Iska, as I'll show you, has some unique characteristics that set it apart from the other polymetallic deposits in southern Bolivia. Now here's a view from the top here. Edwin Vegas drove in the Huaracaza adit here. Huaracaza means windy valley in Quechua. I did about 300 meters of lateral development. He was following up some small, now covered Spanish colonial workings here, and he drifted along and mined some high-grade veins, which were somewhat discontinuous. And when Osvaldo was key to bringing us into this opportunity, first brought this property to me, and we did a due diligence program in 2019. The thing that impressed me right away was how hammered all the rocks were around here. It was evident, far larger system, although at the time we had no idea of what the scale ultimately would be. Edwin also put in this Santa Barbara adit, and as I'll show you, he actually hit the Santa Barbara breccia pipe, but again, this style of mineralization was not suitable for artisanal miners. Today we have 2 surface rigs and a high-capacity underground drill going, and the terrain really is lovely. It's like being in Arizona or Nevada, except at a much higher elevation.
Bill,
This
while
is
you're on this one slide, the prior slide that you're just finishing, it's a very good schematic. Do you think that the business concept is going to be a 1 to 5,000 ton a day small mill and mine in a high grade zone, maybe using an adit or existing adit? Or do you think the business concept is going to be 25 to 100,000 ton a day mega bulk mine?
It's going to be a mega bulk mine. You know, what we are finding is classic bulk mineable scale mineralization, given the size width of the zone. So you're not going to be looking at something small. You're going to be looking at something that'll be of a significant size. You know, 40,000 tons a day or more.
So continuing along that train of thought, I was playing with numbers yesterday. Your initial maiden resource focuses on a 1,200 meter long by 500 meter wide by 600 meter deep mineral envelope in the Santa Barbara breccia pipe. So I multiplied those out and then multiplied by 2.7 tons per cubic meter. And it works out to a 972 million ton mineral envelope. Quinton suggested 30% of that might be mineralized. That algebra gets you in the direction of a 292 million metric ton maiden resource. Are those irresponsible numbers?
No, those are quite reasonable. In fact, so I'll show you the target zone. We've been pushing it out. It's about 1,400 now. So yeah, if you look at that overall numbers,
1,400 instead of 1,200.
Yeah, it's 1,400
and if
now.
it were
So
1 ounce or 2 ounces of silver per ton, 292 million ounce plus silver is one of the bigger silver discoveries in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus you've got all the other stuff in there as well. So yeah, the scale of this system, as I'll show you, is enormous. And it's in fact far bigger, I'll show you with our geophysics, than what you see just, but you're absolutely right. This thing has tremendous scale. very, very consistent mineralization. You know, we've drilled something like 70 holes so far, closing in on 40,000 meters. You know, we have not had one blank hole in this thing. All our holes have reportable mineral intersections, and we you know, are quite rigorous on how we report and determine our intersections. That's really remarkable. I've worked on many projects, even in Jacobina. You know, we had some blank holes here and there, but so far we haven't at Iska Iska. At some point, we'll define the limit of the system, but we certainly aren't there yet.
Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah, no problem. So look, this is just the property here, just to show the outline. Very good access. We have power down about 10K to the south, three-cycle power, or three-phase power, sorry. Tumazos is the nearest major center, 48K south. We have a really good base here. Average elevation about 4,000 meters. Climate's really very dry. So it's a really great place to work. So this is a plan map of the geology of our Iska Iska caldera. You can see the dashed black line here, which is the approximate boundary of the caldera. You can see the scale here, 1.8 by 1.6. This is a huge structure. Our initial discovery was the small Wauwakaza breccia pipe up here. We hit this underground. We were quite excited about this. I remember Osvaldo saying, gee, I haven't seen that elsewhere in Bolivia. And of course, Quinton has a lot of experience with breccia pipes in Mexico. So one of the first things we thought, well, it's very unlikely there's only one, there's got to be more. And then, of course, we drilled to the west and we got into the far bigger Santa Barbara breccia pipe, which is about 800 by 500 meters. And then you can see this magnetic anomaly here. We've been busily drilling that. That's a major extension here. We have another breccia pipe central to the south, which seems to be a little deeper. It's more of a tin silver, whereas Santa Barbara is the full package polymetallic. And then we have a very interesting target, which I'll show you some more information down on the south end, Porco, where we've done some limited.
Bill, would you define breccia for people on the call that might not have had a geology class?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at, let's focus in on the Santa Barbara breccia pipe. That's a good question. So you've got a huge volcanic complex here. And so these breccia pipes form when you build up enormous pressure, both from the magma below and plus you get meteoric surface waters in the mix. And what happens is you build up this pressure to a point where suddenly everything blows. And so you get these structures where the rock basically completely breaks. You get all sorts of fragments, jumbled fragments, and so forth. And these kind of structures are really great hosts for mineral deposit. And if you see this green rock here, this is dacite. These are dacitic domes that have come up. And what happens is these breccia pipes cut these domes. So these domes kind of block the system up. The pressure builds up. You can imagine a huge magma chamber down there continually feeding into this system. And so you end up, if you look at Santa Barbara, you'll find all sorts of fragments of
If I
the
could
dacitic
simplify
dome
in
here.
lay terms, when you look at brecciation, there's all these fragments like a hand grenade blew up. So you have a wall rock with these fragments embedded in it, like a shrapnel explosion. And in this case, the embedded elements are mineralized, right, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a mineralization in the breccia pipe, but there's also an extensive mineralized envelope around, especially in the dacites. And the dacite are great hosts. There's lots of stockwork, veining, and so forth. They just they've been fractured but not brecciated. So in other words, they haven't been exploded like the breccia pipes. But both of these settings are just absolute prime locations for hydrothermal fluids to invade and deposit minerals.
Thank you.
So just, I wanted to point out, I've worked in this business for a lot of years, and we started drilling September 13th from underground, which was exceptional, the first drilling on the property. And you can see the rapid path we've followed. John mentioned our January 26th press release, which was the big discovery hole. You can see this core here is a beautiful example of the classic breccia. The whitish fragments are dacitic, and the matrix is sulfides and tourmaline. So we're progressing here when we defined our original Santa Barbara target zone. So here we are just over a year later, and we're pushing towards a resource. And this really reflects the fact that this is really an enormous opportunity, and we've been able to fast track this forward because we've got a great team in Bolivia and we've been well financed. Now, this is one of my favorite drawings. We did a magnetic survey over the property. We know from measurements of the magnetic susceptibility. So in other words, what you do is you test the rocks to see whether or not they're magnetic at all. And typically if you have, for example, the basement rocks or Ordovician sandstone, they're non-magnetic. When you get into the mineralization, especially the higher grade areas which have more sulfide, they have pyrrhotite, which is magnetic. You'll also notice here at the top here, it's very low magnetic and it's oxide. That's because it's been totally leached. That's why this deposit was never found years ago. If there had been mineralization exposed at surface, the Spaniards were through there with thousands of people. Many companies have been through here. But if you sample on the surface, you get nothing. So the fact we started drilling underground was a big, big plus. So you can see that and this is what's called a modeled magnetic inversion. So this is a software that basically takes your magnetic data and kind of figures out, based on what you know about the geology, what may have formed the anomalies you're seeing at surface. And so you can see that basically Iska Iska is like a giant, massive tongue coming out here, rooted down in a tin porphyry somewhere down in depth. And you can see the major target zones here. Santa Barbara, where we're focused on, which is silver, zinc, lead, tin, polymetallic, central, tin, silver. Porco, which is a little deeper, and it's very interesting. It's more silver, gold, copper, and tin. We don't have the lead and zinc. So we're looking at a typical range here of what you would expect in an epithermal system. So when you're up high in an epithermal, you get more silver, lead, and zinc. And when you're deeper down, you tend to get more copper and gold. And as I'll show you, this Porco Target is very tantalizing. So you can kind of think of Santa Barbara as the frothy top here. This is where you've got breccia pipes and all sorts of high-level features. But I would also draw your attention to the scale here. This is 2.4 kilometers across. You can see where the line is on the plan map, and almost 2 kilometers vertically. This is absolutely huge system. And I'm a system guy. Quinton's a system guy. In exploration, if you want to find a big deposit, get in a big system. This is an absolutely massive system. And you can see that, our focus of drilling right now is Santa Barbara, but we're just working on the tip of this immense system. Now this is a very interesting 3D model of our magnetic inversion model. And what we found is that the magnetic model is a very, very good predictor where mineralization is. And this is the holes on our Porco target in the south. And you can see we did some radial drilling initially. And we recently released the results from our first hole. And if you look at all these holes, you can see they all missed except for DPC01, which clipped part of our model. Well, that's the only part we got some interesting results. You can see they're fairly short intervals, but interesting values. Clearly, we're on the edge, and obviously you can see this big, huge anomaly just to the left here of this hole, which, as I'll show you, is a tremendous target. So we're finding that the geophysics here is enormously helpful. The magnetics gives you the overall picture, and we're currently doing some downhole induced polarization, which we think will allow us to more efficiently map out the sulfide zones. And here's a cross section of through that model I just showed you. You can see this Porco target here. There's hole 1 that I mentioned that clips the model. And, you know, we recently released some channel sampling from the Porco adit. It's about 200 meters south of the radial drill collar. It's actually in the sediments outside the caldera, but it shows you the strength of this system. Our team did some channel sampling along this adit, and you can see the tremendous values here, you know, high silver, gold, copper, tin. And these are a couple of pictures I recently took underground in Porco. On the left, you can see the copper oxides, mainly azurite there, and then on the right is a massive sulfide vein. So, you know, that tells you that this target could be something phenomenal, and we're going to be putting some holes into it early in the
This is not in the
new
main
year.
resource, which is only
No.
Santa Barbara.
Yeah, it'll be the actual resource area is Santa Barbara, but I've been doing this exploration game for a long time. So when you're defining a resource, you never stop the exploration. We got lots of other targets, so I'm doing the work on the resource, but at the same time, I'm continuing to open up other targets. And this is certainly my #1 next target, definitely. And we'll get some holes into that early in the new year. And if our model works out and we can get this sort of massive stuff in this big anomaly, that would be phenomenal. So moving to the resource area that we've been talking about, as I mentioned, we've extended it out. We've done, you know, our initial drilling here, we started out radial drilling because we didn't know what was there. And it was a very efficient way to do a first pass. But the problem with radial drilling is after we got a better sense of the structure, we realized the trend is northwest, southeast, and some of the radial drill holes were in fact parallel to the structure, so they weren't very representative. So we've switched over to doing a whole series of sectional drilling on roughly 100-meter spacing here. And we, of course, been following this magnetic anomaly out here. Unfortunately, I've got a ton of holes outstanding, but there's no doubt that we're looking at a 1,400-meter long target. I'll show you a section shortly. You know, it's 500 meters wide, extending to a depth of 600, and it's open in both directions. You know, we've had a lot of excellent drill results. One of my favorites here is this one about 130 grams silver equivalent over 300. That's hole 18 here where my cursor is coming down. That's in the mineralized envelope. We have holes with high tin. This is in hole 6, which was deeper. Just the scale and extent of the mineralization here is remarkable. And there really is, in these holes, there's very, very little that's not mineralized to some extent. But, you know, for example, if you look at 300 meters, that's 3 football fields. That's really phenomenal. And of course, we got tremendous results out of the Santa Barbara adit. You see very high silver, lead, tin. So this is really a remarkably intensely mineralized, and I think your original estimation, if you assume 30–40%, will make the cut. In your resource, we're looking at a very, very substantive potential resource here. Just to look at this in section, just to give you an idea of the geometry here. So this is a north-south section, actually looking east here. You can see I've color-coded the intersections here. Purple is greater than 110 grams silver equivalent, red 90 to 110, orange 70 to 90, and yellow 50 to 70. The black here is mineralized intervals in 12 and 13 based on visual and XRF gun. These results are still pending, but there's no doubt this zone continues through, and this style of mineralization here is very similar to what we get on the east side. You can see the extent of the mineralized zone here. Lots of high areas, quite well mineralized from top to bottom. And you'll notice at the top, there's nothing. This is totally leached. It's all oxide. So if you stand on Santa Barbara Hill and sample something, you'll get nothing. And that's why this wasn't found. Again, look at the scale here. That's 1,200 meters. Everything I show you on this project has a tremendous scale. There's no little small sections in this deposit. They're all very extensive. So just to kind of summarize then, we've got a whole, as we've discussed, a whole suite of metals: silver, tin, gold, zinc, lead, copper, indium, bismuth, very much like this prolific Potosi type. We have a massive porphyry epithermal system hosted in these remarkable breccia pipes and dacitic domes. And one of the other things that is interesting and significant is the Andes is a place of very active tectonism, one of the great mountain belts of the world. So the mineralization has also been moved around a lot, and it's been also upgraded structurally. So we get these very high zones within our much broader lower grade zones, which really, really makes this deposit. And no matter where you are, no matter what kind of target you're looking for, if you want a bulk tonnage deposit, you need a nice big background mineralization and then some high zones to kick the whole thing over. And that's exactly the scenario here. Certainly in terms of metal contents, regional geological environment, we're comparable to our famous neighbors. But what really sets Iska apart is none of these have these remarkable breccia pipes, and they're uniquely preserved. And you might ask, okay, why is it preserved? Well, the reason it's preserved is twofold. Number one, the epithermal mineralization is accompanied by silicification. So silicification, or quartz, basically, is very, very erosionally resistant. So in these breccia pipes, they're very erosionally resistant. And then the other thing is the basement sediments, which are quartz sandstones, are themselves very resistant to erosion as compared to the shales and siltstones elsewhere, which erode very easily. The other point, which I'll show you shortly, is there is 1 kilometer from the valley floor to the peak. So we have a huge portion of this volcanic edifice. So this thing has moved along very rapidly. So we clearly believe we have the right mineral assemblages. We reported lots of good grades and very large size potential. But I always like to point out exploration is still in its early days. So just looking at this is a conceptual model. Osvaldo Dr. Arce. He's written 2 volumes on metalliferous deposits of Bolivia. This is the drawing that he put together, conceptual model, just showing basically the porphyry epithermal complex. The green here is the volcanic part, and the pink here is the intrusive part. You can see where Santa Barbara and Iska Iska is sitting here. It's at the similar level to Cerro Rico de Potosí and some of the other famous deposits. Huayracaza, our original discovery, is a little higher up, closer to where San Cristobal, and Central is deeper down here, much more like something like Cherokee, which is a tin deposit. The remarkable thing to me is you can see the scale just below Coricolo is the 1,000-meter mark. Well, in Iska Iska, we have this entire 1,000 meters, 1 kilometer vertical section. And we have all these deposit type in Iska Iska, which is absolutely remarkable. And it reflects the fact that the system has been essentially completely preserved. So just to summarize then, you know, we're pushing hard on this 51,000 meters. We'll probably get a little over 40 just before Christmas. Leduc's been doing a good job. We continue to have 3 drills going on site. As mentioned, we're focusing on a 43-101 compliant resource, aiming for the end of Q1. The only thing that's going to trip me up is delays in assays, which is a worldwide problem in our industry. We're well financed. You know, we have about 12 million US in the treasury right now, burn rate of about $1 million a month, huge target zone, but again, still very early stage, and we've got lots of other targets. Porco is high on my list. We're working on metallurgical tests, petrographic tests. I'm actually going to bring a core scanning unit down. Hopefully I'll get that down by first part of Q1, which will help us map out the distribution of the minerals and metals. And of course, the area we're targeting for this maiden resource, as you can see from that magnetic profile, is just a small subset. So exciting times at Eloro. This is an amazing project. The scale is phenomenal. And your next 3 to 6, 8 months, you're going to see a lot more news as we continue to get more results. We continue to fill out the drilling, and I'm really looking forward to opening up our targets, especially in Porco, which I think has tremendous potential. Stay tuned.
Quinton, is there anything you want to add to Dr. Bill's remarks?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of things that I kind of decided to wait to talk about, but one of them was one of your first points there, John, was about the scale of a mine here. I mean, if you think about it in practical terms, if you know this project does deliver a few 100 million tons, say, of resource, you're not going to develop a mine plan that says a 50-year mine plan. You're probably going to develop a 10 or 20-year mine plan, which means the scale of your mine is going to be pretty big. The other thing I'd point out is you look at the nearest neighbors, like, you know, Minera San Cristobal. They're mining at, I think, around 50 to 60,000 tons a day, which puts them at, you know, near getting close to 20 million tons per year of ore. And, you know, that's probably the kind of scale that you'd be looking at for this project. As far as metal endowment, yeah, your point is accurate. This is likely going to be one of the biggest, you know, silver, albeit polymetallic, but silver deposits. You know, if you just look at the silver metal itself, you know, by itself, this is going to be huge. But you have all these other metals. Again, I look at the nearest neighbors. What do they produce? Well, at San Cristobal, you know, they're producing, say, 1.6% combined lead zinc in concentrates. So what are we seeing here? Probably around that same kind of grade. So will this project work? I think so. The metallurgy will be similar, the scale, the grades are very similar. I think that this is, San Cristobal or other mines like it are good comps for this. So there's
I was
one
thinking
thing.
Peñasquito at 130,000 ton a day scale is a good comp. Now it's a different
Yeah.
mineralogy, metallurgy, silver, gold,
No,
lead, zinc.
not really. You know what, John? It's actually very similar. The tin's not at Peñasquito, but the metallurgy is very similar. You're going to float concentrates of lead and
No
zinc.
tin and no copper, but otherwise it's a similar revenue stream.
Exactly, and quite frankly, the same buyers for the concentrates. If you look at Peñasquito, I believe they sell to Dowa and other Japanese buyers. So I would expect almost identical. That's a good point. Peñasquito is a very large scale mine. I think Newmont's main focus when they acquired Goldcorp was actually Peñasquito because that's just such an immense deposit. So that's
So if we're talking about 50 or 100,000 tons a day, we're talking about a billion, multi-billion dollar capital cost, most likely.
yeah, this would be in that realm. It's definitely a big project. Yep, absolutely. But
Bill,
it's
this
also,
might be over your pay grade in several steps down the road. What do you think your board of directors and your management team is prepared for? Do they want to drill this out and then sell it to a major? Or do you think they want to build the factory and get all the squeal out of the pig?
Well, I think definitely our focus is defining this and showing it's a huge deposit. Documenting the metallurgy, getting to a PEA, but ultimately we're certainly not going to be the ones building this mine. As Quinton mentioned, I mean, you're talking huge capital here. You need obviously the ability to finance that, but you need the organization to do it and so forth. So
You
uh,
shouldn't be afraid of the money, Bill. If you have the biggest silver project in the world, people are going to throw money at you like darts at a board, Money's
right,
going to come to you after you publish 300 million ounces. So that
well,
then the
yeah,
issue becomes
I agree with you.
engineering, permitting, and operating.
Yeah, I think though that, I mean, I've been through this transition from exploration to development. I've been involved in, like reactivating Jacobina, and I've been involved in a number of other mining projects. I'm an exploration geologist. My focus is finding it and bringing it to the stage where it can turn into a mine. But once I get to that stage, I've done my job, and you need a whole different set of people to really build and develop a mine.
So your
So
main resource is going to be larger than the reserves of the active mines of Pan Am. When I say active, that excludes La Colorada Skarn, Escobal, and Navidad, which together are 1 billion ounces. And you're a big project even for Fresnillo in Mexico. So I would expect all the major silver companies of the world to line up for you, or gold. Maybe Fresnillo and Pan Am are big enough to do your project, and some of the other silver companies of the world are not big enough alone. Maybe Buenaventura and Hochschild in Peru are big companies, but Buenaventura partners its biggest projects, Cerro Verde and Yanacocha. So it's interesting to see if you had an auction, who the players would be from China and Asia, as well as from the Americas. But your project is actually big, I mean, bigger than Hecla or Cordovan or some of the usual names in silver, First Majestic, etc. So it's exciting to think 4 years down the road what the auction or development process might be. You'd get all the Chinese players like Zijin just because it's huge.
Well, I mean, the reality is there's not too many comparable deposits of this scale that are, regularly found. That this is, I think, turning into a remarkably unique find. It's interesting. Early on, when Osvaldo was looking at targeting, he made the interesting observation that when you look at southern Bolivia, all the highest mountains are all tin mines, except for Iska Iska. So he always wondered, well, what's missing at Iska Iska? Well, what we found out, of course, was it's a much higher level system and much different preservation than the other ones. But his theory was bang on. So yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, and the big guys never tell you if they're watching you, but we know they are. We certainly do a lot of presentations, and I'm sure they've got a file on us, and they're waiting to see how this thing will unfold. But you look at the potential numbers. You look at the consistency of the grade, the extent of the system. Plus, it's got a lot going for it, in terms of access and infrastructure. I'm certainly convinced it will turn into a world-class discovery.
Once again, from the audience, you're welcome to participate via the question box. Right now, there aren't any questions in the question box, but those might develop. How many? It's actually remarkable, Bill, that in 1 year you're able to do enough drilling, 40 kilometers, to have a maiden resource on Santa Barbara. Do you think Porco and Central will each take 1 year of drilling or more?
Well, I mean, one of the options that we obviously will look at, we get some good hits in Porco. We can always bring in more drills. The only reason I haven't gone for more drills is I'm so far behind on assaying that, it's not good to get too far behind ahead of your assaying. Leduc, our drill contractor, has been fantastic. The quality of their equipment, we get excellent core recovery, and production is terrific. So we can certainly definitely scale this up. But I would say on Porco, you're going to probably do another, assuming it pans out, another 6 or 8 months drilling. Another good solid year. I'm sure it can develop other zones that will have potential to have a significant resource. The other thing that I want to do early in the new year is, and actually I checked out the whole locations when I was down there. We can go down in the valley and put in a hole and see where that porphyry is, because that's another very, very interesting target. And the fact is, when you're down the valley, well, you're in the valley and you've got a kilometer back above you. So it's a remarkable opportunity to drill deeper. So we got lots of irons in the
Santa
fire.
Barbara, Central, and Porco might be smaller structures where the porphyry at the bottom is the heat source that brought it all up.
Absolutely. There's a huge tin porphyry down there. I don't know exactly where it is. You can see some suggestion in the magnetic, but that section says, well, it's 1.8 K deep section. Well, take off a kilometer, you're down the valley, that's 800 meters. So Um, uh, so that's one of the things that I want to accomplish in 2022 is to really show the overall extent and potential of the system, get some holes in these targets.
Super, super. Once again, we have some questions now in the question box. How would this deposit compare in magnitude and mineralization to the South 32 Taylor deposit in Arizona, if it's not too early to make this comparison?
South 32, I believe, is a few tens of millions of tons of what's called CRD, carbonate replacement style mineralization. It grades, I think, around 8% combined zinc lead, and it has on the order of, I think, around 60 to 100 grams silver, something like that. Well, that's a great deposit. It's high grade. It's a fairly small tonnage compared to this. This is in metal endowment. This is huge compared to that.
So Taylor is tens of millions of tons, 8% combined. If you go back to Bill's slide that had the tongue with the 3 deposits and the porphyry at the bottom.
Yep.
The geometry of Santa Barbara is smaller than Central and Porco, or at least they're at least the same size. So potentially this is 1 billion tons before you get to the porphyry.
Could be.
So this
Very well be.
eclipses by 20 to 50 fold the magnitude of the tonnage of Taylor. Taylor is higher grade in lead, zinc, and silver. We don't know what the grades are until this is all drilled. Some of the holes here are 1 to 2 ounces of silver plus byproducts. Others are several times more. So we'll see whenever many holes are drilled and the second, third, and fourth resources are what the grade is here.
Yeah, I think that's a prime reason why I want to get some holes into that Porco Target and some of the deeper ones is to get a feeling for the overall system. Well, when you, like the pictures I showed you of the veins underground in Porco, I mean, these are phenomenal massive sulfide veins. We picked out one sample of a vein that was maybe, I don't know, about 1.5 feet long. I think the thing weighed about 30 kilos. You could use it for your workouts. The Porco adit is actually often the sediments, which is to the side and above. So there's one heck of a system driving this thing. So, and I think from the corporate point of view, and I've been through this a lot. For example, when I was doing Jacobina for Desert Sun, for 2 years, the exploration was the news for the company while the engineers worked on refurbishing the mine and reopening it. And of course, once the mine reopened, then the focus shifted to production. So in our scenario here, we're essentially creating an anchor project in Santa Barbara that will get a resource. We don't know exactly how big, but it's going to be large. That can move into PEA and more, while at the same time, we continue to explore and expand and learn more about these other targets, particularly Porco. And I certainly in 2022, I want to establish where that big porphyry is, because once you position that, then I think everything else will fall quite nicely into place.
Your directors or your outside financial advisors probably would like to see not only this maiden resource for Santa Barbara, but the information about Porco Central and the potential porphyry. They might be sweating bullets that you get bought out before you discover the second and third zones.
Well, I think that's precisely why I want to push ahead and open those targets up, which we'll certainly start doing early in the new year.
If I were to make the example of Penasquito that Dr. Tom Patton found when he was working for Rio Tinto, but Rio Tinto has a grade fixation and wasn't interested in the low grade, and metals prices were lower too. Western Silver sold out to Glamis, that sold out to Goldcorp, that sold out to Newmont. So that property is on its fourth owner only because of its success. So that the further you can take this yourself, it doesn't need to get flipped 4 times. You should try to get as much of the value for the Eloro shareholders as opposed to how many times it's flipped afterwards.
That good point. Like I
Absolutely.
watched the story of Penasquito very closely for a number of years, and yeah, there was a lot of value as it got cycled through. I can't remember exactly when the transactions were, but you're correct, John.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Bill and Dr. Quinton. It's a pleasure to see Quinton again, and it's a bigger pleasure to meet Bill. Thank you.
Well,
And
thank
we
you,
look
John.
forward to every the 1 or 2 drill hole press releases every month. They're good to read.
Well, believe me, as soon as I get results, I get them out.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. All the best. Thanks, Quentin.
Thank you.
See you guys.